Hey, paper callers, let's talk about radio advertising for pay-per-call. Now, radio advertising is absolutely massive. There's 11,000 radio stations in the United States alone, and they all have varying coverage and syndication options. So some of those radio stations cover entire major metropolitan areas or even multiple metropolitan areas, and some of them are really hyper-targeted and local, and they syndicate all sorts of different shows and content between them all across the United States. And so, of course, they have radio stations in other countries as well, but for the purposes of this lesson, we're going to focus on United States radio. Now, radio doesn't just mean over the airways anymore. 61% of the US population listens to online radio, which is a really big percentage. And so there are some major players in radio that are digital, like Spotify and Pandora, and these type of platforms are pretty brand new. Their advertising systems are not fully refined yet, and a ton of people are not advertising on them yet, so they're amazing outlets and have a huge potential for success when it comes to performance-based marketing. Now, radio stations in America generated $15 billion in 2017 revenue, and all of that is from advertising. So it's a major market that you can tap into that most performance marketers are not even thinking about. And that's what's really exciting about radio advertising, whether it's digital or over the airways, because if a lot of performance marketers aren't thinking about it, if you can find wins in radio, you're going to have essentially zero competition. In fact, because of the way that radio is distributed, it's not like someone can really go take a look at Los Angeles radio if they're sitting in New York City to try and find your advertisements and copy them. So you can take over major and minor metropolitan areas for specific verticals without anyone even noticing. And that, to me, is a really cool opportunity. Now, the biggest buyers of radio ads are T-Mobile, Comcast, Home Depot, and AT&T. So out of the top four, 3 of them have pay-per-call campaigns. And so right there, it shows you that it's very possible to create a campaign for radio that will get you a return on investment. There's 3 prospects right there that you can go get campaigns for and then run them on radio, and they've already proven that this market works. Home Depot is an interesting one as well, because what is Home Depot? It's home services. And what are some of the biggest pay-per-call verticals in the entire space? Home services. And so there's the proof you need. The top 4 advertisers for the entire $15 billion radio market are all pay-per-call style advertisers. And so there you go. But I have yet to even hear a pay-per-call campaign go on any radio station in my life where I live. So that to me says giant opportunity. Now, according to Nielsen, 57.8 million people listen to AM radio on a weekly basis. Now, AM radio, excuse me, is an interesting animal, okay? AM radio is like talk radio, news radio, sports, okay? And a lot of people, when they think of radio, don't even consider AM radio. Younger audiences typically do not listen to AM radio, and so that is an entirely huge untapped market for pay-per-call that is sort of underneath the normal train of thought when people think radio. Now, normal FM radio has 235 million weekly listeners. So the majority of the US population listens to FM radio, and that's a massive market. And so if you look at it combined, radio reaches more than 90% of the US population every week. 90%, okay? And so absolutely massive opportunity with endless ways to make money in it is what you need to think about when you want to think about radio advertising, especially for pay-per-call. And so radio also has global reach, and these statistics are fairly similar for every single country on earth. And so what does that mean? It means that radio is perfect for internationalization. If you can make a campaign work here in the United States, all you need to do is find a call center that speaks multiple languages, and then you can take these campaigns overseas. And when you take them overseas, it's a little bit different of an animal, but all of that advertising space is going to be cheaper, less saturated, and easier for you to win in once you understand how to internationalize. And we're not going to go into that in detail in this lesson, but please check out our lesson on internationalization if you want to take your campaigns overseas. And so essentially when it comes to radio advertising, you have three different options. You have broadcast, which is over the airways, normal radio like you listen to in your car. Digital, which is internet like Spotify, Pandora, SoundCloud, and so on. And satellite radio like Sirius and XM radio that comes from a satellite. And that's even more interesting because satellite radio listeners pay for that service, and so they're very loyal to it. Now, just like anything, there's pros and cons, okay? And so some of the pros of advertising on radio, first and foremost, massive reach, 90% of the US population. In fact, probably 90% of the global population in first world countries listen to radio. That statistic, I'm just assuming, but it's got to be pretty close, right? And so there's less competition from direct response marketers for a few reasons, mostly because it's a different animal. They're not thinking that way. Most direct response and digital marketers are not doing call campaigns, and so they're probably not thinking about radio as an outlet. Radio is traditionally viewed as branding, and so people don't necessarily associate it with direct response. There's also a bunch of work that you have to do to get set up. You got to produce a radio ad. You got to split test multiple radio ads. You got to negotiate with a human, God forbid, right? Digital marketers at the radio stations. And so there's more work that goes into it. And depending on how you buy your media, there's more money that you have to put up front to test. Now, not a huge amount. You can get away with, you know, $500 or $1,000 or a couple $1,000s in radio spend to test it, which really isn't that much money if you're running a direct response business. But direct response marketers are like, higher barrier of entry. I'll focus on Facebook ads or whatever. So it's a great way to get in there, and there's less competition. Like I said before, too, it's not easy to find and steal advertising campaigns because you have to be physically located in the market that the person's advertising to even hear the campaign in the first place. And so that means that once you find some wins, they're easily scalable because the reach is there and less likely for people to steal your campaigns. Now, just like television, the cool thing about radio is you can subconsciously program people, which may seem a little scary, but it's absolutely true. You can get in their heads and carve out a memory that you own in their brain, which is crazy, but cool and an awesome way to advertise. And we're going to touch on that a little bit later when we talk about what you have to do to produce a successful radio advertising campaign. Now, just like I said, there's less competition, and that's because there's a higher barrier of entry. And that, to me, is a competitive advantage. All right? Anytime that it's harder to do something, especially if it requires, you know, a couple $1,000s to do it, I'm excited about it because basically all the lazy and cheap people or people who don't have the funds can't even test. And so that's exciting to me. When I used to do direct response advertising, if I could find a barrier of entry that was like $25,000 or $50,000, I would be all over that because it keeps everyone out. It keeps the people out who are going to steal campaigns. People who have 25 or 50 grand in budget, they may hear your campaign and then they're not going to steal it. They're going to adapt it and create their own resources because they realize that they want to build their own brand. And so it's a different kind of competition. It's not the shitty, shady online advertising competition. It's effectively highly resourced competitors, and they're going to do it regardless of what I do. And so they're not really a threat to me. They're not really a problem. They're not going to race to the bottom and destroy a campaign. And lastly, with the kind of reach that radio advertising has, there's almost unlimited opportunity, okay? Which is also a con technically because it means there's a lot to choose from and a lot you can lose money on. But I want to think about scalability, you know? A lot of online marketers are like, oh, how can I create a campaign that makes a couple $100 or $1,000 a day and then they're pretty happy? When I think about marketing in general, I'm thinking, okay, how do I test and find something that can make some money? And is the opportunity there to make 7 figures a month in profit? And if the opportunity is there to make 7 figures a month in profit, that's pretty exciting opportunity to me, or at least was when I ran traffic, because I don't run traffic anymore. I build technology for people like you. So unlimited opportunity means, can I spend at least $1 million a month? And in radio, absolutely. And so if you can make stuff win, you can just pour gasoline on the fire and scale it pretty easily too. And your return on investment as you scale with radio should go up, because as you buy more and over periods of time with bigger contracts, your cost actually goes down. And so that's the cool thing about radio advertising. You start spending a buttload of money, your cost is going to come way down, and then your profit just goes way up. And so at first, there's that barrier of entry and your ROI is going to be lower, but when you find wins, your profit goes up as you scale. Now, some of the cons, targeting is not an exact science, and we're going to talk about targeting on radio. It's a little bit of an art, okay, combined with a little bit of statistics, but you're never going to get it perfect, and so you have to be creative. And that, to me, is also a pro, because it means that if you're not smart about this, people can't win, and so that, to me, is a good thing. So there's also a higher cost than online advertising, right? You can't do a radio ad with 50 bucks. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to do it. So you're going to need a couple $1,000s realistically to get into radio. So it may not be the perfect solution for you if you're just getting in to pay-per-call. I think online marketing is the easiest way to start if you have a limited budget or no budget at all, frankly. But as you grow and you start making money, and you can afford to lose 2,500 bucks, let's say, on taking a flyer or learning on radio, then it's the right thing for you. Now, like I said before, cost comes down drastically with scale. So starting is expensive, and then when you start to win, you're actually rewarded when you win, because your budgets go up, your cost goes down, and we'll talk about negotiation. Now, another con is if you're not creative and your ad isn't entertaining people, they're going to change the station, and then you're not going to get heard. And so we're going to talk about negotiating radio spots, but whenever you negotiate a radio spot, if you're going to do advertising, you should try and negotiate for a permanent first run. And what I mean by that is when it goes to an ad, you want your ad to be heard first, so someone else's crappy advertisement doesn't cause the listener to change the station. You're going to have the highest return if you have a great advertising, if you have that first spot before another ad is heard. Okay? And of course, one of the cons is it's limited to audio. So people have to remember who you are and how to reach you, which is a complicated process, but we're going to talk about that. It requires a lot of creativity to win, and immediate campaign pausing is typically not possible. You can't just email your ad rep and be like, pause this. They can pause it and stop distribution, but it's going to take a day or two. So you can't immediately pause it or immediately change your creatives. There's a limited window to do so, so you have to be thorough, and you have to make sure there's no errors in your advertising. And then you need to stay on top of your advertising reps and get proofs and get recordings of the ads when they were on the air. And there's a lot of follow-up and back and forth with this, which is just more work, but that's one of the cons, right? You have to do work to make this work. So how do you actually do radio advertising? So simply put, in a short 10-step process, you're going to determine your target audience. So we're going to think about what type of campaign are we running, who the listeners are they male and female, and what demographic group are they in, where are they geographically located. And then once we understand who our target audience is and where they live, then we're going to reach out to radio stations. So we have to do that first, because we don't want to call a Pittsburgh radio station if we're really looking for retirement homes in Florida, okay? We want to call the radio stations and the salespeople that have coverage where our clients are. Then we talk to the ad reps. You're going to have to find the ad reps at the radio station, get them on the phone most likely, and then get a rate card, reach information, demographic information for their listeners. They're going to have a whole package on this. So the good thing about radio is you're not going to ask them for this information and then they have to go figure it out. No, no, no. They're going to have a standard rate card and standard demographic information for you so you can make your decisions. And that's your upper bounds, right? You should never pay street rate, which is what they give you on the rate card, you should negotiate it. We'll talk more about that. So then we want to determine our spot length. And so that spot is either going to be 30 seconds, 45, or 60 seconds. Okay? And it's not necessarily better or cheaper to have a shorter spot. So we really want to think about that when we're producing our advertisements. And then, so we're going to choose our placements, our time of day, where we want our spot to run, and then we're going to start the negotiating process with the advertising rep. We should never talk to just one radio station. We want to talk to 3 or 5 radio stations, get all their rate cards and compare their rates for different times of day, their demographics, and then pin them head-to-head against each other when we start negotiating. If these radio networks think that you're only talking to them, you're not going to get a lot of movement on the negotiating. But if you're, putting them against each other, they're going to try and win that business back and forth. So one of the things about radio is it's kind of declining. All right? Ad revenue for radio is not going up. It's declining a little bit, especially airway radio, because a lot of it's going online to the digital radio stations. And so the representatives are going to be hungry. All right? And they're typically going to be veterans. Especially at some of these local radio stations. They're going to be people who've worked there a long time and they're seeing the decline in radio revenue. And so you're going to be able to push them if they know they're competing against stations that they may have a rivalry with. Okay? And I will even go out and say to the ad rep, who are your biggest competitors for my business? And they're going to groan. They're not going to want to tell me that. And I'm just going to be like, look, I'm going to Google it and call them anyways. So why don't you just be cool about it? Tell me who they are. And then they're going to know you're serious. And if they give me those names, I'm going to call them. And if they don't give me those names, I'm going to Google them right when I'm on the phone and confirm with them who they are and then contact them. And I'm just going to be fun about it and be like, look, I got a comparison shop. You can't be mad at me for comparison shopping. I just want you to know that you have to give me a good deal. This isn't my first rodeo. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to comparison shop you. And so let's figure out a way we can build long-term business together. And I need some of that love up front so I can do my testing. Okay? Like that's how I'm going to handle the situation and how I have when I've done radio advertising. So next, I'm going to create a radio advertisement. We'll go into that in detail. You have a few options, but realistically, it is not expensive and it is not hard to do. All right, so you don't need this incredible professional studio and voice actors and all this expensive stuff to create a radio advertisement. You really do not. And I've run quite a few successful radio advertisements that I produce for $100 or $200 or even use my own voice, okay? My business partner, Harrison, and I used to live together. And when we did, we actually were like, all right, well, how do we do radio ads one day? And we got a kid. His name's Mark, hilarious kid, and he brought a microphone over, and he had a band, okay? And so we found a guy who had a band on Craigslist, and for literally nothing, it was like $20 or nothing. I don't even know if we paid him. We might have gotten him lunch, okay? We just created like 30 or 40 advertisements with voice that ended up being really successful. And so it is not expensive to do this on the production side, and I don't think you should spend a lot of money hiring an agency that does this to create your advertisement. All right, you can find ways to do this relatively cheaply. Now, then you're going to give your advertisement to the station. They're going to tell you what format and what length and all this other stuff, and you give it to them in the proper format, and then you must confirm your time slots. Because if you don't confirm your time slots, they're going to assume you don't care. If you just say, yeah, run this radio ad, and you let the ad rep do it, they're going to put you in less preferable spots because some of their other advertisements are smart enough to, advertisers are smart enough to ask for high quality slots in the premier slots. And they can sell those for more money or use them as negotiating tactics. And if you don't ask about them or confirm them, your ad may not run during the desired time. And so you want it to run during the desired time. In fact, even better off to get it in your contract with them that it's going to run in the specific times. And then you want to follow up with them to make sure it actually does, and then ask them for recordings of all of your ads and the actual times that they run. Okay? And then lastly, we review the results. And That's real simple. If it's close to profitable, we optimize. If it's way off, we don't. We cut the spots that don't work and we keep the ones that do and scale. All right, so radio advertising, return on investment by sector. And what I wanted to share with you here is statistics from an independent agency about how companies actually see their return on ad spend. So for department stores that are advertising locally, they compute a 17x return on their investment, okay? And so if they spend $100, they're bringing in $1,700 in revenue. Now, mass merchandiser, very similar to a department store, same thing, 16x. So local businesses do really well with local radio, but they can't scale it. They're stuck in their bucket. But the reason they get such high return is because they play their ads over and over and over and over and over and over and over until it's ridiculously repetitious. And you need that. And so when you run a radio advertisement, if it plays once, you shouldn't expect a lot of results. What you're looking for is to get people over and over and over again so that they remember and they use you when it's time. Now with pay-per-call, someone may not be interested at that very moment, but maybe they need it a week later, maybe they need it 2 weeks later, whatever it is. And so your radio ad spots are probably not going to yield their highest return on investment the first time they run, and you should be prepared for that. So you really should be running a radio ad that has a multiple week flight or a multiple month flight to really see what it's going to do for you. Now, if you run a spot for 2 weeks, you don't get a single phone call, something is wrong. But if you run a spot for 2 weeks and it's not producing a return on investment for you, but it is generating calls, give it some more time and see how it goes, because this is a long-term thing. Now, telecommunications providers, like some of the biggest radio advertisers in the country, they get a 14x return on their ad spend, and they're mostly nationwide. And so they not only enjoy the scalability of radio, but they're able to really take advantage of what radio can deliver. And the good news is there's lots of telecommunications pay-per-call campaigns, and so you can start there and know that it's already working for these companies in some way, shape, or form, and just improve on what they're doing. Next, home improvement has a 9x return on ad spend, which is all the home services stuff. And so those are two really high value sectors that are already winning nationwide in radio. Next, a lot of quick service and fast food restaurants get a 3x return, which is not great, but they have to fight for their business in these local areas to really get people in there. They have a lot of competition. But you guys, on the other hand, don't necessarily have any or a lot of competition, and so that's why radio is a great opportunity. Now, I also want to say here, if you're going to do radio, you should pick a couple target markets and consolidate your budget in a place where you can get the repeat spots over and over and over again, instead of trying to go to a mass market audience at first so that you can see what your long-term ROI is before you scale. Because your radio ad may not work if you play it twice in a week, but if you play it every single day for 3 months, you might literally train the market to call you, and that's when you might start getting your massive return on investment, like some of these return on ad spend numbers. Now, there's 3 different types of radio ads, essentially. There's pre-recorded, which means that you're going to pre-record a radio spot, okay? And you either have to produce that, or sometimes radio stations that are desperate for advertising will make you a simple ad for free, and you can ask your rep. But I don't recommend you do that. I recommend you get good at creating your own advertising spots so that you have control over it, because they may make you the first ad for free, and if it sucks and doesn't produce, you don't win. They know that too, but this is really for you to figure out and to design your ad for your audience. And so I don't recommend that you do that. Even if it means you fail a couple times or you have to learn how to make your own ad, I still don't recommend that you do that, because if you're a good marketer and you can learn how to make great ads, that's going to help you everywhere, not just in radio. And so you need to learn how to do it. And like I said, it's not expensive, and it's a lot of fun actually to make advertisements. I love making the ads. I think it's hilarious and a good time. Next is the DJ. So if you don't want to promote or produce your own advertisement, the DJ will actually read your ad for you and throw a couple sound effects in there. So you can do it, but what happens with this is one of two things, all right? They may record the first one the DJ does, and so that may or may not be good for you, or they may have every single DJ impromptu do the advertisement every single time, which means you may not have consistency in the advertisement, which means that sometimes it may work, sometimes it may not. One DJ may be worse than the other or better than the other, and you're going to run into that issue. Though, there are some reasons why this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's less intrusive because the radio stations have trained the listeners to listen to the DJs they like, and so the people are listening for the DJ's voice, and they don't change the radio station. And it also functions as a bit of an endorsement. Because the DJ is giving your ad in his voice, it implies an endorsement of your product or service, which is a good thing. But like I said, poor execution can really diminish results. And so it depends. So what you can do is you can have a DJ do it, ask for a recording of all the spots that the DJ did it in, and then review them. Maybe one DJ is good, maybe one isn't. You figure it out. And if one's really good, you can just take the recording of that DJ and ask him to play that recording instead of having him do it impromptu. And he can even play that recording during other DJs' shows so that the high quality recording is still there. Then last, we have public service announcements. Okay, and so these are a little bit trickier because you have to craft your message in a way that it offers something to the public that's beneficial. But if you can do that, the ad spot for a PSA is usually way cheaper, and it kind of incentivizes the audience that the announcement is coming from an authoritative body, which will get you results in different ways, but you have to be really creative about it. So you can win with any one of these three. You just really need to figure out what's going to be best for you, and you're going to want to talk about your ad rep for it. I highly recommend that you try and do all three. If you're going to make an investment in radio, you got to play with it. I would start with pre-recorded. I would try and figure out if I could convert that into some type of public service announcement. For some things, it's probably not possible. But for others, for major segments of the pay-per-call space, I think you can create a public service announcement and then make it work. And that may be really beneficial for you. And then, of course, depending on the DJ, it may be beneficial to have the DJ do it. Like if you get the top 40 DJ to give your ad and then record that, you can then syndicate it across other shows, and that might produce really great results because the DJ is known in that area. And so you really have to think about, are the DJs in those local areas super popular? Do people love them? And then get them to record an ad, and then figure out exactly what's going to produce the best results for you. And I understand that each one of these then has even more cost, because not only then are you split testing ads and public service announcements and DJs and all this stuff, it adds a lot of variables in there. But just like any type of advertising, the more testing you do, the more pockets of gold you're going to find. Now, there's a bunch of different spot lengths. You got a 15-second, 30-second, some of them do 45 even, and then 60-second spots, okay? And shorter is typically less expensive, but not typically proportional. So what radio stations have learned is that it's not the length of their advertisements that gets people to change the station, it's the number of ads. So regardless of whether you pick 30 seconds or 60 seconds, the radio station is still probably only going to play 3 or 4 ad spots in each commercial segment. So let me cover that again, just in case it didn't come through perfectly the first time. Radio stations have segments of ads, and typically those segments are going to be 3 ad spots, maybe 4 ad spots. It all depends on the radio station. And what that means is, regardless of whether you choose 15 seconds or 60 seconds, you're going in an ad spot or an ad segment at the radio station that has a limited number of spots in it. And so they may discount a 30-second spot, but it probably isn't going to be half the price of a 60-second spot. It may be 10% or 15% cheaper, but not half. And so you want to look at that math and see if it's really worth it to take that discount, because repetition is the key to success. And if you repeat these phone numbers over and over again and have more time with the listener, you may actually have a more successful ad campaign for only a little bit more money, okay? And so, like I said, radio stations don't typically limit by ad time, but the number of ads per segment of ads. And so that's why they're not going to give you a proportional discount for a shorter spot. In fact, I would be really surprised if any of you guys actually make a 15-second pay-per-call campaign work on radio, because there's not enough time to repeat the phone number a few times so that the listeners can remember it. And so how do we produce a radio advertisement, Adam? Well, first and foremost, you have to choose your spot length. You're going to have to do that up front before you make your radio spot. Longer spots are proven to work better because people can repeat their message more and have more engagement with the user. And so by repeating your message more or having more time to tell a story, you're going to see a higher return on investment. Also, you're going to need to repeat your number over and over again so that they can remember it. Next, we need to write our script, and we need to focus our message on a single idea and then repeat that idea and phone number so that people can remember it. Now, typically, they're not going to remember a phone number if you just read it, especially if it's a complicated phone number, not a vanity number, not a pattern. And so the number one way to get people to remember your phone number is to sing it. You got to put it in a song, okay? And that actually is going to make the difference between success and failure. And I have some examples for you about this, but you really need to write a jingle and sing the song, all right? And then you can reuse the jingle portions of it in your IVR, which is a great way for the customer to immediately know that they dialed the correct phone number. Now, you can also do this with short codes and texting and whatever you want, but the key here is you have to create a song or a jingle for them to remember your phone number. The likelihood that people are going to remember it otherwise is almost zero. And so this may seem complicated for you, but it is not complicated to write a little jingle and then find someone to sing it for you, okay? If you want to do this yourself, you can get a Blue Yeti microphone like I'm using right now. And then what you need is some royalty-free music, or find a kid that's local that plays the guitar or makes music, and he'll make you a little jingle. It's not that hard to make a jingle, and there's a ton of people who absolutely love to make music, and they'll do it for cheap. And so you can find these people on Craigslist, you can find them on Fiverr, you can buy royalty-free music, and then you can edit it yourself in Audacity, or if you find someone who's going to play the jingle for you on their guitar, they probably edit too. And so it's not going to be that expensive. It should only cost you maybe 50 or 100 bucks for the editing. If you're going to use royalty free, you're talking $15. For your voiceover or someone to sing the song, you're probably talking 30 to 100 bucks, depending. And then if you want someone to actually write the music and record it for you, and they're a hobbyist, but they're good, again, you can probably get it for as cheap as 20 bucks all the way up to, I don't know, 200. But either way, all of this combined is just a couple $100 bucks. It's not that big of a deal to produce the advertisement. Now, I want to talk to you guys about memorable phone numbers in radio ads. So if you just choose a random phone number, it's probably not going to work, okay? Unless you sing it or you get it in a song, like numbers you hear in even some pop music. You remember them forever because they're in a song, all right? Now, vanity numbers are easy to remember, and so are really strong phone numbers. I have some examples below here. And so you want to get a vanity number or a strong number or a rhyming number, because the best way to get someone to remember it again is to sing it. So you need them to sing it. Otherwise, they're not going to remember the song. If some guy's just like, call 855-323-3412, call 855-323-3412. No, it's not happening. That's not how the brain works, okay? But if you're like, call 855 leaky sink. Okay, even in my terrible singing voice, you're gonna remember that. Okay, you're like, oh my God, my sink is leaking. 855 leaky sink, right? You pull out your phone, you hit it. Now, if I gotta remember 855-323-3412, even if I sing that, it's gonna be complicated. Okay, it's just not gonna work. Now, if you get a stronger phone number, like 800-554-5000, it's easier to remember, and you can put it in a song. Again, call now, 800-554-5000, right? Make fun of me. But that's what needs to happen for you to remember it, okay? So it needs to get in a song. It needs to have some music with it. It needs to be repeated, and it needs to be a simple phone number. So either a really strong one or a vanity number to get the results you want. Now, if you want really strong phone numbers, like this top one, 800-554-5000, Ringba has a limited inventory of these. They're not cheap. You're going to have to rent it because they're extremely expensive for us to acquire. I'm talking like up to tens of thousands of dollars a phone number, but we have them and they are available. Vanity numbers, we also have those available, and we can also help you find them, okay? So talk to your rep. We have some interesting search tools, and we can help you find vanity phone numbers. We can also help you acquire a vanity phone number somewhere else and figure that out with you. But it's really important if you're going to do radio that you have a memorable phone number. Otherwise, you're in trouble, and you must sing it to people. I would not do a radio ad with a phone number in it unless it were sang, because I don't think it would have the propensity to work as one that doesn't. And so if you disagree with me, I'd love to have a conversation and a debate about that. Show me the results. But the most profitable radio campaigns that I have ever done were songs with phone numbers in them. So guys, sing it. So once we have a general idea of who we're marketing to and where they are, we need to choose our market. So first we need to do AM versus FM, and that's going to have a lot to do with our demographics, right? Because AM is mostly talk radio or sports or something of that nature. And so if you're going to listen to NPR, you're a specific kind of person, and we need to determine whether that's our audience or not. If it's not, we're going to look at FM because there's a lot bigger audience there. We can target certain people by the traits of types of music that they listen to. Before we do that, though, we need to understand where they live. And we need to understand that because certain radio stations only reach certain geographic areas. So do we need old? Do we need young? Or whatever? We need to understand where our customers live. And if there is a high concentration of our potential customers in a specific market, we're going to want to focus our ad dollars on that market for a greater return on investment. And I highly recommend that you do this. You pick one highly targeted market that has all of your potential customers in it, and then focus your money there with repetition versus trying out a bunch of different markets. And it's easy enough to figure out where your customers congregate. And then once you do that, focus. Okay, now maybe there are a bunch of different places where they're at, a bunch of different cities. That's fine. I still recommend that you focus on one, and then once you figure it out, then go replicate it. Because like I said, it may take 6 weeks of blasting these people every single day during their commute or whatever it is with the same ad before you really start seeing your ROI. Now, you also need to understand what language they speak. In the United States, you really only have 2 options, English or Spanish. But there are a lot of Spanish-speaking radio stations, and they have usually cheaper ad rates and can be amazing if your call center has bilingual capabilities. And so that's an entirely untapped market that you need to pay attention to in pay-per-call, because people who speak only Spanish still need things like home services and insurance and have financial issues. So if you want to take this to the next level, you can also look at reaching those specific audiences. And they're super easy because you just look for Spanish radio stations. Your work is already done for you. Then we need to understand what type of music do our target audiences listen to. And then we want to go after the stations that predominantly play those types of music in our target audience. The good news is your demographics are pretty standard. like most demographic groups listen to the same types of music. And so typically what you'll find is a higher number of radio stations that play music that targets your demographic in areas where your demographic predominantly lives, okay? Then we want to think about, do they commute to work? Or are they retired? Are they male or female? And are there any income levels that we're specifically looking for, because they actually apply to music taste as well. And so the good news is the radio stations have all the demographic information, but what we have here on the screen is pretty industry standard, okay? So adult contemporary is women 35 to 44, and it's basically the top 40 hits over and over and over again with no rap music. Then we have adult standard, and this is all like 50 or 55 plus, and it's like the nostalgia format. I want you to think Sinatra, older pop music. It's not hard rock. It's entirely geared towards older people. Then we have classic rock station. That's usually men between 45 and 54, and it's old school classic rock, but it is almost always men. And so if you're advertising typically to men, it's a great place to do it, and that's a really targeted range. Now, country music is the largest genre of music nationwide. It has the most listeners. Now, I was surprised, actually, to hear this when I put this information together, but I verified it, and it's true. And their demographics are not really skewed male or female or an age range, but they're skewed towards areas of low diversity, okay? And so country music, typically white people. But it is a massive market and audience, and they're very loyal to their country music. And so it's consolidated in the center of the United States, mostly in the South, but all over as well. So especially in rural areas. That doesn't mean that it's not an incredible place to advertise. It's actually the biggest option you have, but you really need to know your audience before you go with that. And so the inverse to that would be just rap stations, okay, that only play rap. It would be the opposite. It would be mostly African-American listeners, but it's not nearly or even close to the size of any of these other segments up here. Next, we have news or talk radio. That's men, mostly 45 to 54. And sports talk radio is the fastest growing segment of radio content. And so if you want to go after men that are 45 to 54, you'll know that your audience is growing if you advertise to sports radio. Now for religious, that's going to be moms. So women, but mostly moms, 25 to 44, and that's only religious music, and it's mostly light rock and uplifting, and they're probably not going to change the channel. So that's a unique thing about these last two, talk radio and religious. Talk radio, the ads are typically really geared towards those people, and so they're not going to change the station. And so, you know, people listening to Rush Limbaugh are not changing the station. They actually want to listen to the ads. They don't leave their camp very often. And so the people who listen to news, talk radio, and sports probably are not changing that station. And so they're going to listen to more of the ads all the way through. Religious channels, even less likely to change the station because they're programmed to only listen to that content. And I say programmed, and I mean it. They're not changing the station. And so if you have something to sell to moms 25 to 44, you should be all over those religious channels, because they are just going to listen over and over and over to your ad. You can really get them to become loyal to your brand, okay? And with that, on the religious stations, it's almost like getting an endorsement from God. Let that sink in for a minute, okay? Next, we have soft contemporary. That's women 35 to 54. And that's going to be mostly ballads, easy listening. You can think like Celine Dion, okay? It'll put you to sleep, but that's what they listen to. And then if you want to reach the millennial and younger demographic, top 40 hits is men and women, typically between 18 and 34, and that's going to be all pop and rap music, or like poppy rap music, not Gucci Mane, but like Drake's biggest hit, okay? Now, all of this is mostly accurate, and it's not ever going to be entirely accurate because there's no way to talk to every single person that listens to radio and what channels they listen to and then figure this all out. It's mostly based on statistics, but they're pretty accurate at this point. And I would use this as a rule of thumb when doing my radio advertising. I would absolutely use this because these demographic groups are going to be pretty close. And then I would also ask every radio station I'm talking to for all the demographics of their different programming so that I can like match it up and find those sweet spots. And then I would look at the age distribution of a geographic area using US Census data and then figure out where the people I want to hit are actually physically located. And then I would look at the radio station, the demographic groups of the content, and the census data, and I would find my target locations where I want to hit, and then I would look at how many listeners are in those areas in the demographics that I want to hit, and then look at the cost versus listeners to find out a CPM rate, you know, a cost per listener essentially, and then I would compare that between the different radio stations, and then I would also see with census data if any of those geographic locations have higher levels of income, because that means they'll probably buy more. And then that's where I would start. Highest level of income, highest congregation and demographic group that I'm looking for with the radio coverage that has the lowest cost. And I would just beat my message into the listeners' heads over and over and over and over again. And that's going to have the highest propensity for success. All right, so once we figure all that out, we essentially already know who we're advertising to. We have our spot. We have all the details figured out. We're talking to the radio station. Now we have to think about the time we're going to run it. Now, if you do not request specific spots at specific times, you're probably not going to get them. And that is a major mistake with radio advertising. And let's talk about why. Okay, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., you have your morning drive. And that's in the local time zone of the radio station. And so the demand for that spot is high, and that's because listeners are highly engaged and captive, and they also have a 99% plus phone penetration. So anyone that is driving to work, driving their own car or carpooling to work, has a 99% chance that they have a phone in their pocket. So for pay-per-call, that's pretty good. Now, I say they're highly engaged because it's the morning, they've woken up, they don't want to sit in silence in their car, they're listening to the radio. They're on their way. Another reason why this is in extremely high demand is because if they're commuting on Monday, they're probably commuting on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. People are creatures of habit, and even more so when it comes to their morning commute, because they have to be at work every day on time. And most people work Monday through Friday, and they have to be there at a specific time. And so if you run your spot during the morning drive time, at the same time, at the same spot, Monday through Friday, what you're going to do is guarantee repetition with the exact same audience so you can drill your message into their head, and that's why the demand is high. Because smart marketers know this, and they're going to do it. Okay? Next spot, and before I go into the next, these are slots, not spots, excuse me. Before I go into the next slot, I want you to understand that each radio station may have a different consideration for when this is, all right? Maybe it's, 6:30 to 10:30 or 5:30 to 9:30, whatever, okay? But typically, they're going to have some semblance of these slots, okay? And they have a limited amount of advertising spots that they allow during these time slots. And so there's going to be competition for them, and that's why you want contractual placements. All right. Next one's 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. This is like the midday slot. All right. The demand on this is medium. And depending on your target demographic, this time slot may be ideal. Older age groups leave radio on at work is background noise. All right. They're going to be a lot less likely to pick up the phone and call because they're at work. But when it's background noise, if you can create a really cool jingle that's repeated over and over and over and over and over again, and it's a home services product or an insurance product or whatever it is, you are going to subconsciously get in these people's heads because they're just going to listen to it over and over and over again. And the midday spot is going to be less expensive than the morning drive or afternoon drive because there's less demand for it. And so you can get more repetition in there. You're going to have to test it, but same people every day leave the radio on at work, and they leave it on all day, okay? Next, we have the 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. This is considered the afternoon drive, second rush hour of the day. Demand is high for the same reasons that the morning one is high, okay? And food, entertainment, and ads relating to home or home services are going to be most effective as people are likely to be interested in this at this time, right? They're going to be hungry, they're going home, they want to be entertained, and if they got to go home, maybe their wife's going to be nagging them about fixing something in the yard, right? Or whatever it is. So they're going to be thinking about these type of things. So if you listen, you'll notice that Home Depot and other home advertisers buy a lot of these spots during the afternoon drive because people are headed to their home, they're thinking about their home, you can give them a message about their home. And again, there's a 99% plus phone penetration for this. However, they're more likely to pick up the phone and call for something they have to deal with afterwards. So if they got a plumbing issue, maybe they'll pick up the phone and call a plumber on their way home from work so that they can have that guy come over, right? They're thinking that way, and so you should think that way too. Next up, we have the 7 p.m. to 12 a.m. This is the evening, or they'll call it some other things, slot. It has low demand, all right? It has a much smaller audience. People do not typically listen to the radio at home. It's going to be skewed towards older audiences, and it's going to be lower engagement, right? Because they're not a captive audience. They can be doing whatever they want with the radio on in the background. You don't even know if they're sitting there listening. Now, the thing about the drive slots is you know they're listening because they're in the car. But in the evening slot, they may have the radio on at home. Maybe they went out to dinner. You don't actually know. But these should be significantly less expensive for you. And this is why you need to know about this, because those ad reps at the radio stations, they're going to try and figure out if you have any idea what you're doing. And if you don't, they're going to bang you on these because they know what they're doing, okay? Now, rates on these should be less expensive, significantly less expensive, any way you slice it, all right? And then you have the overnight, okay? 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. There is very low demand for this because there's not a lot of people listening. So it's going to have the lowest possible prices. But if you can get creative with this, all right, get creative with the audience and the products that fit these audiences, you can do really well. It's like an overnight infomercial. Overnight infomercials crush it when they're done well, but you run into similar issues with that on radio. Are the call centers open during these times? What type of volume can they handle? Do people even want to buy your product this late at night? You know? And so this is like remnant internet advertising. You got to figure out and make your ad work for your audience. Okay? Now, again, on the best times to advertise, maintenance tasks, things people need to get done, early in the week is when people are motivated. Okay? So Monday through Wednesday mornings, or the afternoon drive Monday through Wednesday, that's when you want to think about things like doctors, lawyers, home services, financial things. People are motivated on Monday to like get stuff done. It's the beginning of their week, and by the end of the week, they don't care about life anymore again, right? They want to party or do whatever people do, Netflix and chill, okay? And so typically, based on previous statistics, get stuff done type offers are going to work well on Monday through Wednesday mornings or Monday through Wednesday afternoon drives. Now, shopping and activity related stuff, these are going to work better later in the week, Thursday through the weekend, all right, when people have free time. There's going to be auto related, like new cars or car financing, furniture, retail, travel and vacation stuff. All that works better on weekends when people have free time. They're not thinking about getting stuff done. Now, once we figured out all the stuff that we discussed and we're talking to our ad reps, we got to start negotiating for our ad spots. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is ask for a rate card and demographic information. They're going to have it ready, and they're going to give it to me. The reason I ask for this is so I know my upper boundary. And then I'm going to ask them for discounts based on volume of spots, repetition of spots, and contractual lengths over time. Like, what if I want to run a spot every day for a week? That's a lot more spots. Do I get a discount? What if I'm willing to commit for that same advertisement every day during the same spot for 3 weeks, a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 24 weeks, a year? Where are the discounts at? And then they're going to give me all that. Now I have the upper bounds and their discount tiers for things going over time. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to make these ad reps work. Okay? I'm not going to be concerned about their time. I'll be respectful of it. But I'm going to ask them all sorts of questions because I want to know. And then I'm going to ask the same questions to every single radio station I'm talking to. I'm going to make them all work. And then I'm going to figure out what their viewer rate or listener rate is, excuse me. And then I'm going to look apples to apples. I'm going to compare the cost per listener between every radio station for the same type of inventory. So the same audience, the same type of radio station that has the same demographics. And I'm going to see who's cheaper. And then I'm going to ask them, all right, do the rate card rates include specific placements, or are they run-of-station ads, unscheduled? And then I'm going to find out if I get discounts for running unscheduled during specific times or segmented times, right? Can I get unscheduled, but first position during the morning drive? And can you play my ad 4 or 5 times? I want to know what all my options are. And then when I'm going to buy radio ads, my budgets are going to be a little bit bigger, so this is going to have to be tailored to you, but I'm going to want to commit to some sort of schedule so I can get discounts. And I'm going to negotiate hard on those, right? And then I'm going to ask them for introductory rates for my first ads so that I can test. And then ask them if I can apply those introductory rates to my first contract so I can test and then get the benefit of the discounts. And then I'm going to want to make sure I do all my scheduling during the same time, same show, see if I can build first position. Because what I'm trying to do here is build an audience. I want the same people to hear my ad. Now, that may seem different coming from direct response on the internet because you're like, well, I want someone to click and buy. So I don't want to show them. I want to put a frequency cap on it. I don't want to show them the same ad to the same people every single time. That's just lost money. Well, with radio, you have to think about it differently. You have to build your audience. You want them to hear it over and over and over again because then you become their default option for when they need your product, okay? Then I'm going to ask the rep where the deals are. Like, do you have good deals during different slots? What are you not selling that I can get creative with that you can give me an absolute killer deal on? And they'll tell you, like, ask where the remnant is. And they'll tell you, and then I'll push them on that. Well, what if I buy, remnant for a bunch of spots and agree over a couple weeks? Can you get even lower? And they'll tell you. And then I'm going to ask them, how's the market shift? Like spring better, winter better, certain shows, whatever. And what I'm trying to figure out here is how to get a price on the absolute cheapest spot I could absolutely get. So I have my lower bounds. And so if I have my upper bound rate card and my lower bound, then I know I need to negotiate somewhere in that range, and I want to get as close to the lower boundary as reasonably possible, because then I have a gauge to figure out if I've gotten the best deal. Now, believe it or not, some green advertisers show up at radio stations. They're like, oh, that's the rate card. All right, I'll take the rate card price. They don't know any of the information we're covering right now. Their ad doesn't work. And the ad reps, they want branding campaigns like that. People just spend money and they don't track it. But you need to tell your ad rep that you're a direct response advertiser and you're tracking your results. Because then they know then that they have to give you preferential pricing or it's not going to work for you. It's not the same as a brand. Okay? And then you want to let them know that you have a big budget. I don't care whether you have a big budget or not. Okay? If you're like, look, I have a $50,000 radio budget in Q1 and I got to do a lot of testing. I'm willing to allocate some of that to you, but your station's a wild card for me. I got to convince my boss to make this happen. So give me a good introductory rate. Give me a couple extra spots for free. Yeah, ask for free spots. Cost them nothing. If the advertisement space isn't sold, cost them nothing to run your ad. So ask for freebies when you get started. And then you're going to want to build a great relationship with your ad rep so they can notify you when inventory is unsold. So the best time to buy radio inventory is when it's unsold and they're not going to run an ad during that spot. And so you want to call them and ask them, you got any unsold spots this week that you can give me at a hell of a deal? I want to make some money for you and me, right? And I want to convince my boss that your station is a station we're going to do business with over the long term. So work with me on this. I got a budget, but I got to prove it to this guy. He's a bit of pain in the butt when it comes to money. All right, so work with me. You want to make it collaborative with the account rep, and anytime you need to go head-to-head with them and get pushy, you need to blame your boss so that it doesn't harm your relationship. I don't care if you don't have a boss. If I'm going to negotiate with radio stations, and if I were doing this, I would because I love doing it, I would not be Adam, the CEO. I would be an account manager at my company that has no decision-making ability whatsoever. And so no matter what I do, it's someone else's fault. And then I can just be friends with this person and try and work together. And then over time, they don't negotiate with you. When you spend a lot more money with these people over time, you know the rules, they know the rules. There's no games anymore. You're just, hey, last minute, great. Super price, great. All right, got to pay a little bit more this time, fine. Right? It's no more bullshit. But at the beginning, you got to like massage your way in to at least better than average pricing. That's my goal, right? Can I get better than average pricing, because then I have a competitive advantage, okay? And you do that by showing up, by knowing your shit, by negotiating and talking to a lot of radio stations, and don't take the first offer. And so whoever shows up the most prepared and the most knowledgeable to a negotiation typically wins it. And for you, that's going to be harder because you're getting into radio ads. The ad rep's going to know more than you. And so you got to do a lot of diligence up front so that you can negotiate harder. Now, you get your costs down by 20, 30, 40, 50% on average. That absolutely can be the difference between a successful and a failed campaign. And so when it comes to this type of advertising, you need to get good at it. You need to push. You need to do your diligence, because if you don't, you have a much higher failure percentage. So once your ad spot runs, you did all this work, you're all excited about it, all right? You need to make sure that you used a unique number for each region or spot or placement or whatever, all right? And I know that's going to be complicated if you're going to do a song. And so theoretically, you need to have one for each region and audience type. And then that means you're going to have a song for each one. It means you're going to need a bunch of vanity numbers, or you're going to need the guy to produce a bunch of different songs. And that's just what happens. And so the cool thing is, if you have a few of these, you can use 3 of them for testing and then 1 of them for successes. So you do 4 songs. And then you use the 3 for testing. You run your spots over and over and over again. And when they win, you switch to the one that has the best vanity number, and you just keep running that one. And then you reuse the 3 testing numbers, give them a little time to cycle off, look at the call volume. It should mostly disappear when you stop running the ads. And then you test again, okay? And then you use your strong best vanity number, your best strong number, as your I already know this market works number. So as you expand, you're actually building a brand on your really good phone number, but you can still split test your campaigns. Obviously, you're going to look at how many qualified calls you receive. You're going to calculate the ROI. And if you're running in multiple markets with your branded phone number, a great way to do this is by area code. It is not 100% accurate, but if you're running, a campaign in Phoenix, you're going to see a Phoenix area code. If you're running one in Kentucky, you're going to see a Kentucky area code, and you can kind of look at your statistics that way. You calculate your return on investment, and if it's positive or close, you call the rep back, you expand your placements, you negotiate contractual rates down. It's just a math equation at that point, right? Even if it's close to even, you go back to your ad rep and you're like, hey, I lost 10% on this campaign. I need to get my cost down 30 points. How do we do that? How do we do that with a contract? How do we get it down 40 points? Do I buy a year's worth of advertising? What do I do? And if you get a year's worth of advertising, you want to have a termination clause in there, and you want to have payment terms in there, so you're paying on a monthly basis or something. And then that way you can get out of your contract, but still take advantage of those really low advertising rates you got from committing to a year. All right? Maybe they won't let you terminate until, say, after 3 months. If they're like, no termination clause, you come back and like, look, I understand, but I need an out. What if this ad starts failing? And so you get a termination clause after a specific dollar volume or specific period of time, right? You just find creative ways to do this. Now, if it's largely negative, you need to try another angle, create a new advertisement, find a new audience, cancel it. But anytime you do any type of advertising, you should just expect to fail, okay? You should not expect anything but failure, because you got to test. Advertising and marketing is nothing but perpetual failure until you find a win, and then you scale your win. So you should get comfortable with losing some money when you do this, and that's why you need to set a budget. In your first budget, you should assume you're going to lose it all. And so you should never do radio advertising unless you can afford to lose every dollar you invest in it. And that's a tough thing for people to get over, but if you can start at a budget that you can afford to lose 100% of and expect to lose the entire thing, if that happens, you're fine. If that doesn't happen, well, wait a second. You're starting to win. But you should not bet your entire pay-per-call career or your entire life savings on a single radio advertising campaign when you've never done this before. You should expect to fail. All right, so let's take a look at some radio advertisements, and we can talk about what they are, how they work, all that good stuff. So first, we're going to do a public service announcement.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
So that was obviously an insurance campaign. There's only so much you can say in a public service announcement, and that was a branding campaign. I thought it was pretty creative, but they didn't really get a call to action in there or get anyone to do anything. And so if you're going to do this for pay-per-call, you need to frame it like they need to call you for something that you get for free, and you're going to have to negotiate with the radio station on what they consider a public service announcement. So you're going to want to ask for those regulations. Now, this one is very old, and I am a student of advertising history. I love advertising history. I think you should definitely look back at what campaigns worked in the past, and you can modernize and copy them. Because if they worked then, they'll work now. All right, I'm going to tell you 100% that the advertisement I'm going to share with you right now would kill it, okay, if you modified it and moved it here today. And it's from 1994.
We're right here by your side, and we're for real. 1-800-94-JENNY.
Call 1-800-94-JENNY today and lose 20 pounds for $20. Jenny Craig, you won't just lose, you'll win.
You won't just lose, you'll win. 1-800-94-JENNY. 1-800-94-JENNY.
All right, and so the interesting thing about that ad is the fact that I remembered it for this class from 1994. And so I was like, oh, I remember this radio ad. I'm going to look it up and see if I can find it and then use it in my class. It's 2019. I still remember it, okay? And so that is an example of how you do a song and a radio ad with a vanity number with flawless execution. And Jenny Craig made hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even billions, I don't know specifically, but they crushed it on TV and radio. And what do? They just created a song, a jingle around their phone number, 1-800-94-JENNY. Everyone remembers it. You play it over and over and over again. It just kills it. And so that's why you have to sing the phone number to get it to work. All right, let's take a look at another one.
Here we go again. Alfano Nissan's lot is overstocked with more than 400 cars, trucks, and SUVs, and we need the room. Alfano Nissan has over 16 acres of vehicle after vehicle, all priced to move. If you've been waiting for the best deals of the year, this is it. All new Altimas lease priced at $199 per month with 0 down. New Sentras with 0% financing for 72 months. And that's just the start of our blowout deals. Bad credit, no credit, we have guaranteed credit approval. Credit is never a problem at Alfano Nissan. Stuck in a lease? Not anymore. Alfano Nissan can get you out of your lease early and possibly lower your current payment. If you're ready for a new vehicle, there's no reason not to get into Alfano Nissan today. Unless you don't like saving money. Alfano Nissan. Online at alfanonissan.com or stop by Route 202 Torrington Court.
All right, so that one is not a pay-per-call campaign, but I wanted to include it in here to show you what a radio pop-up essentially sounds like. Okay, that's an example of interruption marketing. No one enjoyed listening to that. They will remember it. It will get in their head. It'll probably cause a lot of people to change the station. What they did is raise the general volume level of it. So if the music is like going along, then the advertisement, right? And it's interruption marketing on the radio. And a lot of companies do this. I think that in pay-per-call, if you do it depending, like you actually want to scare someone, you can get away with it, sure. But you need to be careful about that. I don't particularly like this ad other than the fact that I think radio pop-ups are great. Like, I just think it's funny. But this wouldn't convince me to go down to that dealership. But what it does do is when it starts, it's like, bam, it scares them. People might even get a jolt of adrenaline when it comes on because they're driving a car and then they hear a car crash and turn into money. And so what they're trying to do is associate a visceral feeling with the advertisement. And that in advertising is what you should do. It's what you want to do. But in this case, I don't know if associating a car crash and an adrenaline rush burst with a Nissan dealership is necessarily going to be effective in getting people to come into their store. So while the production quality of this was good, the interruption level of this was good, the thought process behind the noises and the car crashing they used was good, I don't know what the effects of this campaign are going to actually be. Though the goal of getting people shocked and startled while they're driving is being achieved, and so I like the ad. I just don't know if they made any money with it.
Sipping on that goose, rolling off the X. Police won't let me loose unless I come up with a check. Violate my personal space, searching through my clothes. Found my weed, found my rose. Now I'm locked up on the floor. I got them charges, man. I got them charges, man. I call my loyalty flowers. Now I'm out of game. Now I got them charges, man. Charges, man. He's a lawyer down for you. Listen to his name. A T flower 525-1998. A T flower 525. 1998, a T Flowers 525-1998, a T Flowers 525-1998.
Call me, Lawyer T Flowers, 525-1998. Felonies, misdemeanors, juvenile delinquency, traffic tickets. Call me, don't wait. Lawyer T Flowers, 525-1998. Easy payment plans now available.
All right, so the only mistake I think that my boy T. Flowers made in his Memphis attorney radio commercial, which I have to say, if you're going to know your audience, he knows his audience, is that they should have ended the song with the rapper saying the phone number, not him. And so cognitively what happened there is you're like into the song and you're like remembering the phone number and you're getting it down and he's like, I'll solve all your felony, your drug convictions, whatever you idiots get in trouble with. Right, I'll even give you a payment plan. But then he was like, call me 5555 whatever. I don't really remember the phone number. I do remember 1-800-94-JENNY though, right? And so that was a mistake in execution at the end. You need to end with the phone number in the jingle. You should never say the phone number outside of the jingle so that over time it gets in people's heads. Now, this one still probably got in people's heads. I think this would have still been profitable for him, and I'm picking on a guy who went way out there and took a risk on some advertising and did a clever job. So if you ever see this, T. Flowers, I want you to know that you did a kick-ass job in your commercial, and next time, give me a call. I'll help you round out the end of it for free. I won't even make you pay for it or finance it, right? So this is a great example of a song in a jingle, but you always want the song to be only in the jingle. So let's check out another one.
If you get in an accident, your car or a truck got hit. If you get in an accident, your car or a truck got hit, just do it, do it, do it, do it. Call us now, don't be lame. Call us now for 1-1-PAIN. Right now, don't be lame. 1-800-411-PAIN. My neck, my back, my car just got smacked. My neck, my back, my windshield just got cracked. Call from home, hospital, or accident scene. Remember, after 911, call 411. 1-800-411-PAIN. 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 My neck, my back, my car just got smacked. My neck, my back, my windshield just got cracked. 1-800-411-PAIN is a lawyer referral service and non-attorney spokespersons.
I mean, incredibly good, okay? Couple of reasons. The 800 number in the song wasn't repeated every time. They said 411-PAIN. And that's really what they were driving home, is the 411-PAIN. And they said it over and over and over and over and over and over and over, right? That was it. They're just like, I'm going to rap this song, and the song is the phone number, and I'm just going to say a little bit about getting hurt in a cracked windshield. And this song, people will not change the station on. It's got a catchy beat to it, right? It's a little bit more accessible. The attorney one, he's going a little bit deeper into the culture that he's trying to find, so it's a little bit more Gucci Mane. Well, this is a little bit more Drake, right? And so this advertisement can run on the top 40, frankly, with rap in it. I mean, every demographic group, I would say male or female, 18 to 45, you can get away with this ad right here. This is an incredibly good example of how you do a song with a vanity number. They got an 800 number. They weave it in. They repeat it a lot. I'm sure they crushed it with this. This is an incredibly good example of how you do a pay-per-call campaign on radio. Here's another.
If your air conditioner broke down, would you call an expert auctioneer?
Gonna open up the air conditioner now. Can I get a wrench? Looking for a wrench, looking in the toolbox for a wrench. Screwdriver, got a screwdriver.
Yeah, no. You'd call the real air conditioning experts, service experts. You'll get a written 100% satisfaction guarantee. If you've heard you need expensive repairs, now get a free second opinion. Call Service Experts Heating and Air Conditioning at 866-EXPERTS. That's 866-EXPERTS. Or visit serviceexperts.com. License CAC 1813864.
All right, so that's a pretty good advertisement. They did a nice job with it. I mean, they're basically just telling people who they are and what they do and then trying to add a level of credibility to the song. They have a good vanity number, so they can kind of get away with being sloppy about it, right? 866-EXPERTS, pretty good. I remember it. They didn't sing it. It wasn't memorable or fun. It just was a really good vanity number. So you can get away with that if you have a really good vanity number. But my favorite is obviously putting it into a song. That's how you're going to get the deepest penetration into people's heads, because they remember a jingle and a song cognitively very differently than humans remember numbers. And so I think they could have done a better job, but their agency that did that probably is working with a client that, you know, pushed back. And so I think that's one of the biggest issues you're going to have if you're representing a brand, is they're going to push back. They want creative control. But if you're doing a general pay-per-call campaign, you can make whatever songs you want. And so you should make lots of songs, just repeat the phone number in the song, and people will remember it, right? Good.